choice when I think about my journey was to make a first
Yeah.
choice. But for me, that first choice was picking up the phone, and most people know the story around
Yeah.
that. What is one of the first choices you made as you reflect back impacted your journey to enduring success?
Gosh, I thought of a lot of these low points. There's been a lot of low points, Trish, but I thought a lot of these. But I think one that really comes to mind is the financial crisis of 2008, when everything collapsed in September and October of '08. And a couple years before I'd started Bunnell Idea Group, I had two kids in private school. Becky and I were like, I had just become an entrepreneur a couple years before. We were really having fun with that. And stupidly, Trish, I don't know why I did this. It was sort of a grow up in a small town in Indiana mentality. For some reason, I paid off a bunch of our mortgage around the 1st of September. And I thought it was safe because it was partially a home equity line. I could write another check and it was check and get the money out if I wanted. I really felt like this would be a fun thing to do, is like pay off the house. And I basically took almost all of our disposable cash and paid it off. Financial crisis hits. Our house has been reappraised. It's now worth a big percentage less. You can't get the money out, Mo. We're closing the equity line. We're freezing it, whatever. And my wife she was doing something for the weekend for her, a hobby that she has. And I did this big spreadsheet of our expenses, and I looked, and I'll never forget it. I had literally 100 days of cash and I had no income coming. It was game over. Like, we were in emergency mode, and I did not want my kids to be impacted. So I was thinking about the drift-driven design thing, and I made this workbook of what I wanted my life to look like. And I know your audio listeners can't listen to this, but if you're on video, you can see it. Like, I wrote down 5 or 6 quotes that were meaningful to me. I wrote down my values. I wrote down very specific goals for what I wanted something to look like 10 years or X many years later. I pulled it back to 3 years from then. And I wrote down, like, in a couple paragraphs, my life is going to look like X. And I would look at this every morning and remind myself, I can get out of this. And I pulled it back to like an annual plan with photos and things like that. And I would look every week at it. And then I would write down, this is what I'm going to do each day this week that'll move me a step farther. And I won't bore you with it, but we sold things that were real meaningful to us. There was a massive amount of pain through all that, but we clawed our way out of it. And then that choice of like, I am not going to give up. I'm going to find a way to do this, and then we turned it around to where, like, that. It's almost a joke now. Like, that wasn't that hard, but because the numbers seem smaller now. But let me tell you, it was not good at that moment.
And you turned it around and created incredible, like your whole. I mean, now you have been helping others from a business professional standpoint create professional success. You've been doing that now for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So you have.
Yeah, exactly.
Really
now we've trained.
That choice not only impacted you and your family, but it's impacted the other people that you are serving now.
Yeah, at first, in that moment, those couple of months where it took about a year to claw out of that, but especially those first 3 or 4 months of just getting things started again. I think at that point I was only thinking about my family. Like, it certainly pulled all the way into, I got to keep this together. And Becky and I, like, every night we figured out, what do we do next? What do we do next? But now, years later, we've, like you said, we've trained over 25,000 people in a system that didn't exist at that exact moment. Some of it was in my head, but it wasn't documented. And now we've got this massive company that helps people right now. There's virtual Zoom rooms with trainings going on with other people that are being impacted, that their lives are being changed. Like, it wouldn't have happened, to your point, if I wouldn't have doubled down and say, I'm going to do this.
All right, I'm going to keep us on first choices for a second, because one of the things that popped in my head is, and I purposely, you and I have talked about this, say not the first choice, but a first choice, because I think we're constantly faced with challenges or obstacles or goals. And if we don't chunk those down to a first choice, sometimes it seems insurmountable. Is there another first choice that you are twiddling around? Like, do you think there's another first choice in Mo's mind, whether it be practical or profound, that you might want to make?
You mean going forward or something that already happened?
Yeah. No, going forward.
Yeah, I think something struck me the other day. I read this and it was really interesting. And it said, somebody said, all we have is time, and money is just a tool that can buy you time. And I thought that was really interesting. Always thought of money just as a tool, like a shovel. Like it's not good or bad. It can be helpful if you want to do it. And I think what I've got to do now is make a first choice around buying more time, if that makes sense. Like how can I get more scale? How can I impact the world in a better way? How can I buy more time with my family? I made a choice, and it sounds silly, but it's a little scary to take a 6-week sabbatical this summer. Like I need it. Like the last 2 years, I don't know about you, but it has been bonkers. We've doubled in size. Our company doubled in size last year. We did, if I'm honest with myself, we hadn't built up the team as big as we needed to. We have now, but last year we hadn't. I took a big shoulder of that burden myself to do delivery work that I usually wouldn't dig into because we were growing, and I was burnt out. And I think to have the guts to say the team can handle it, they're going to be awesome, to let go, and we are building systems where I'm not going to check in for 6 weeks, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. And the business, everything's going to be fine. But that's sort of a first choice to say, I've now got to re-engineer my life in a way that meets the design elements that Becky and I want. Yeah. We're empty nesters now for the first time. Like a bunch of stuff has happened in the pandemic, and it's now time to move to the next step that we need to move to.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining me for our Choose and Become interview series. You could find this episode and others at trishkendall.com. Just go to trishkendall.com/choose-become-interview-series. Or if you have a question or just want to leave a comment, email me, trish@trishkendall.com.